Let's begin by coating the bottom of the skillet with olive oil. And while that heats up, we dice half an onion. You can also cut it in julienne, but I prefer diced because it cooks more evenly with the other ingredients and it looks better when plated. Toss them in the skillet and cook them on medium-low heat until they get translucent, or about 5 minutes. Now while I wait for the onions, we'll chop a couple of scallions. Now I cross-cut the balls before chopping them because they are dense, and cross-cutting them makes them cook evenly with the rest of the scallions. Toss them in with the onions, mix them all up, and let them cook for about 3 minutes. We get some garlic and finally mince it. Now one thing you can do to make things easier for you is to prepare your ingredients ahead of time so that you don't feel pressed for time when you're cooking. This is what chefs call mise en place, which is a French term for everything in this place. This process is used in successful restaurants to ensure that everything on the cooking line is ready for service. Now before we toss in the garlic, we need to make room in the pan and add a tablespoon of olive oil. Let it heat up a bit, add the garlic, and let it cook for a minute before combining. Next, we'll dice some tomatoes while the onions and the garlic simmer. Here I'm using some round tomatoes, but you can use Roma or any other type as long as they're ripe. Now I'm dicing these tomatoes in a non-traditional way, but this requires some practice. We have to slice and not chop the tomato so that we don't bruise it. The trick is to slightly angle the knife so that the heel hit the board before the rest of the blade does, stopping it from slicing all the way through the tomato. Turn the tomato and repeat. Put the tomato on its side and slice into cubes. When you get to the end, simply dice it the same way you would an onion. Again, this technique takes practice, and it isn't as safe as dicing it the conventional way, so be cautious. Add them to the skillet and mix. We're going to lower the heat to a simmer so that the tomatoes soften up, but before that, season with salt, fresh cracked black pepper, a small pinch of cumin, 1 packet of Sazón Goya or half a teaspoon of paprika, 1 beef bouillon cube, and mix it all up. Lower the heat to a simmer and let it cook for 8 to 10 minutes. In the meantime, chop up some cilantro to be added to the tomatoes later, and some extra for garnishing. And like I said before, if you don't like the taste of cilantro, you can always use parsley or nothing at all. But note that herbs will elevate the taste and presentation of your dish. After about 8 minutes of the tomatoes simmering, we add our herbs and mix it to combine. We don't want to overcook the herbs, we just want them to heat up enough to release their flavors. About a minute. Now set it aside. I moved it to the other burner and kept it warm until we needed it. Next, let's prepare the steak. This dish is traditionally served with a thin steak, but some also use a thick ribeye or New York strip. Pat it dry with some paper towel so that it doesn't boil but actually sear when we put it on the skillet. Season the steak generously with salt. Now, a common mistake many home cooks make is that they under-season their steaks, especially thicker ones, so don't be afraid to be a little bit more generous than usual. Add some fresh cracked pepper on both sides and press it so that the seasoning actually sticks. Add some vegetable oil to the hot skillet, let it warm up for about a minute, then add the steak. And of course, lay it away from you to avoid getting hit with the oil. This type of thin steak will cook in about 2 minutes on a hot cast iron skillet. You just need to make sure that the skillet is hot and that you pat dry the steak before seasoning it. After cooking it for about a minute on each side, take it off the heat to rest, but leave it on the skillet to keep it warm. Now I'm going to use a stainless steel skillet for our eggs, and you can too. The trick to not having eggs stick to your stainless steel is to let the skillet get hot. Not warm, but hot. After about 5 minutes of the skillet heating up, add some vegetable oil and a teaspoon of butter for flavor. We're now ready to crack a couple of eggs. The trick to getting perfect eggs with a runny yolk is to cover them as soon as they're dropped in the skillet. Cooking them for about a minute at medium heat, and then resting them cover off the heat for 30 seconds. You can rest them longer if you want medium to hard yolks. We can now start plating while we wait for the eggs. Now traditionally this is a carb-loaded dish with rice and french fries or even beans, but you can always substitute with a salad and other greens like broccoli. Add our steak and generously top it off with our Hogao, aka our Creole sauce. Slide on the eggs and garnish with cilantro. Now the moment of truth, and see if we overcooked our eggs. Look at that, perfect. 1 minute cover on medium heat, then rest cover for 30 seconds. This recipe should take about 35 minutes after you get the hang of it. And this time includes the rice and the fries. If you like Colombian food, check out my empanada recipe video.